Their second to last ever show was performed here in 1986 in the Dream Ballroom. The Stooges albums were dissected by that band, deconstructed by that band, analyzed by that band, put under harsh light, and interrogated by that band, waterboarded by that band for as much information. We were trying to unlock the secret of the bass and drums and where all of that power came from. And we listened to those records until they fell apart, trying to figure it out. And it was a good time because it's good listening. But trying to study that music is like trying to study air. You can look at it, but if you don't get it, you're never going to get it, so you might as well go along for the ride, because chances are, you're never going to be that good. And so, the rest of us mere mortals, that's why they make records for people like us, so we can put the needle on and go, let the pros do the work. And so there's that. So years go by. People like you and me with discerning taste in music, we know who the boss is. You know, we know it's the Stooges, of course. And Iggy has the luxury of touring all over the world, and a lot of people get to say thank you to him. He goes in front of many people and they say, hoorah. Yet Ron and Scott Asheton are somewhat isolated in comparison. They might meet someone in the parking lot of a Kroger's, and the guy says, hey man, your music means a lot to me. Hey, thanks, as I put my groceries in my car. But they never got the big hoorah. And that's when the Stooges reformed. And they went on tour, and that justice was finally served. And many years ago, I was sitting in Iggy's apartment many years ago in New York, and he said to me, he said, what would you think about a Stooges reunion? I said, well, what lineup are you talking about? Because one is intact, and the other one could not be completely intact. He said, well, with Ron Asheton on guitar. I said, do you really want to try and fill those shoes? I mean, you know how epic those records are. And even more importantly, who in the world could possibly play bass and lock up with Scott Asheton to make it do that thing that it does? And he said, yeah, you know, maybe you're right. Because I thought it would be a great idea. I just didn't think anyone could fill those great shoes of the bass player in the Stooges. It's a big deal. And so, years later, the Stooges reform. And so I make inquiry. Who is going to play bass in the Stooges? The Stooges made one of the most magnificent choices anyone can make on planet Earth. His name is Mike Watt. Understands the way that music works, the mathematics, the scientifics of it, more than Mike Watt. That choice was perfect. And so I was not there for the first show when they got together and played. Someone handed me, weeks later, a CDR of the show. And he gave it to me, he said, let's play it and see what you think, oh big Stooges fan. He said, do you think it'll be any good? I said, I'll be able to tell you in about 10 seconds. Because I'm only going to be listening to kick, snare, hi-hat, and bass. Because the rest doesn't matter. Because if you don't have that, you don't have anything else. He put the CDR on, about 10 seconds in, all the hair on my arm stood up, I went, whoa! They got that right! And that band made several successful, mind-blowing laps around planet Earth. And they did not play in front of a few thousand people. They played in front of hundreds of thousands of people. Brazil, Japan, all over Europe, Australia, New Zealand, all over America. I got to see a handful of those shows. I stood on Ron's side, right over there. Specifically on the Big Day Out tour in Australia, 15 to 20,000 people a day in a huge field looking up at the Stooges. And there's Ron playing note perfect, just jamming these young people up with these songs. Meanwhile, every single member of all the different bands on stage that day, including the poor sons of bitches who had to go on after the Stooges, are all right over there, because school is in, and they're all watching with great interest. And I'll never forget the first time I saw them play this newer lineup. And they got a few songs in, and as much as I hate to admit this, I welled up and started crying. It moved me that much. When they went into Loose, I just lost it. Because it's one of the greatest things that has ever happened to rock music is that song. And so, sadly, Ron Asheton is no longer with us. But take heart. He got to see up close and personal, how many lives he and his bandmates changed all over the world. And so, he heard it, and he went away knowing that this music was not for nothing. It was not in vain. It was not stupid. That it was vital. That it was the epitome of rock and roll. That he was not wrong about any of this. That he was, in fact, quite right. And hundreds of thousands of people screaming their asses off are the proof. And so tonight, we don't have Ron here in person, but we have him here in our hearts. And as long as those records are still around, we will always have those records to play. And in that way, it can never die. And you don't need me standing in front of you blabbering all night, so I'm going to leave you in a few seconds with this one thing. I go all over the world traveling because I'm a curious guy. I carry with me several gigabytes of music on a hard drive. One of my missions in life is to infect young people with good music, because I think it makes them better people. And so many months ago, I found myself in Sri Lanka, as you do. And I was in the mountainous region in central Sri Lanka in a place called Kandy. And I was staying with a family, and there's a wife and a husband and a 15, 16-year-old kid who speaks very good English. So I find myself kicking it in the kid's room. And I said, "You like music?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "You got any cool record stores in Kandy, Sri Lanka we can go to?" He said, "No." I said, "How do you get your music?" And he got into that aw shucks mode of, well, we find it on the internet, and a dog dropped a song, and we picked it up. I said, "I'm not here to charge you 65 cents. You know, I just want to know how you get your music in the middle of this weird rainforest in Sri Lanka." He said, "Any way we can." I said, "Have you ever heard of this band, this band, this band?" I started naming all these bands. And he'd heard of some of them, but he'd never heard the music. I said, "You wanna?" He went, "Oh yeah." I said, "Move over." And I put in my hard drive and I did some selected dragging and dropping. Top Shelf, Sun Ra, Coltrane, Hendrix, Fugazi, Black Flag, Minor Threat, Bad Brains, and on and on. And so I leave him, as young people need a room and a door they can close so they can pretend they're in Joy Division or something. Anyway, I leave him to it, and I come back to the house several hours later, and the good wife has cooked us a nice table full of Sri Lankan fare. I'm sitting there with the good husband and the wife, but the kid is nowhere to be found. He's in his room. You can see the door shaking from the music. So Ananda, the husband, he goes to the room, "Come to dinner." The kid sits down to my left at the long end of the table and just stares at me. Doesn't say a word. He just stares at me with this maniacal grin on his face. He won't say anything. I said, "Is there a one-liner attached to that maniacal grin on your face?" And he said 2 words. "The Stooges." The Stooges that resonated with you. And he looked at me like I had just cured cancer or given him his winning lottery ticket. And with all sincerity, he said, "Thank you." And I feel bad for the father, because the kid's going to hit 18, and the father's going to do something stupid like trying to ground him. This kid who spent his adolescence with the Funhouse record will take his father to the backyard and beat his ass. Because the music of the Stooges makes you stand up for yourself. And that is the transformative quality of that music. And that's why forever you're going to see young kids on the stage jumping up and down like a bunch of psychotics singing Stooges songs. Because that is the way it is going to be. And that is enough of a soapbox that you need from me. So tonight, we do all of this